Hey everybody, it's Emily at ARG Schooling, and today I'm going to give you a bunch of mini book reviews. I've been reading a bunch of historical fiction lately for various things, and I thought, why don't I take a minute to talk about what I've been reading. So I've read 3 historical fiction books, and I just thought I'd talk about what I've been reading. So the first book I read was The Gold Eaters, and this is by Ronald Wright. I read this with level 11 in mind, and it will be in level 11. It's definitely been decided. I really like this book. So this is historical fiction that takes place in the late 1400s, early 1500s, as the Spanish conquistadors were coming over to the Americas and pretty much messing stuff up. So they came to Mexico and all of those areas in Central America first, and they heard rumors of this land of Peru that was full of gold, and so this story begins with Waman, who is the main character, and he is about 12, I believe, at the beginning of the story, just on the cusp of becoming a man and what that means for him and his culture. And he wants to prove himself, so he decides to go off to sea, and when he does, he gets kidnapped. Their boat gets attacked by the Spanish, he gets kidnapped and taken prisoner, and they decide to use him as their translator. So Waman has to not only adjust to that, but he has to learn Spanish, he has to learn their ways and how to handle living with these monstrous people. And the Spanish do not get painted very kindly in the story, and they shouldn't, because they did some really awful stuff. What I loved about this book, though, is how well it portrayed Waman and his life as he had to struggle through these 2 completely competing cultures that he was sort of in the middle of. I found the story to just be really captivating. I was sucked in from the beginning. I never felt bored. I was just there with him in this world where he was struggling to find his place, and it was so sad reading about the Spanish pretty much walking into this beautifully kept, like, well-maintained empire and ripping it to pieces because it wasn't theirs. They wanted it for themselves. They didn't believe that what they saw happening, which was a peaceful world where people coexisted well together and there were no poor because everyone was well cared for, and they're like, well, this can't be right. Let's make everything terrible. So yeah, I loved the story. I loved the way it was told. I thought it was very well done. Highly recommend. Definitely going to be at level 11 if you're going to be doing that next year. The next book I read is also for level 11, and that is Queen's Own Fool, a novel of Mary Queen of Scots, and this is by Jane Yolen and Robert J. Harris. This is actually the 2nd book in the Stuart Quartet, and if you read Girl in the Cage before or in level 2, this is kind of the sequel, but not really, because obviously it's not the same characters, but this is the same author. And this story follows Nicola, who is, at the beginning of the story, an orphan, and she lives with her uncle and is in their acting troupe, and they're trying to find a way to get some money. They're wandering the streets of France, and they get picked up by someone who is looking for an acting troupe to bring to the Queen, and so they get brought in to meet Queen Mary and King Francis, who is the newly crowned king after the death of his father. And Nicola somehow makes herself known to Queen Mary. She's really funny and astute and very outspoken, and the Queen really likes that about her and decides that she wants her to be her fool, which in this world isn't necessarily a court jester. You often hear the word fool as if someone is dumb or an unintelligent or a comedian, kind of. And in this world and in this time in history, a fool would have been someone who told the truth in a clever way. And Nicola has that talent. She can make the truth sound funny or amusing or witty. And so that's her job. Mary wants someone who's going to tell it to her straight and not just tell her what she thinks she wants to hear. So Nicola goes from this poor peasant girl working as an illiterate dancer in an acting troupe to being well cared for in the house of the Queen. And she follows her through Queen Mary's life from her time in France to when she goes to Scotland, and just at the end of leaving Scotland to escape to England. So I really liked this book. I am a sucker for Tudor anything, and even though she's a Stuart, not technically a Tudor, although she is part of the Tudor family, so I count it. I count it as a Tudor. And I love reading about that time period. I'm a sucker for it. And I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was well done. I didn't think it was babyish. Sometimes these kinds of stories that are, it's not quite YA and it's not quite middle grade. It's sort of a weird in-between world between middle grade and young adult. It was very well done historical fiction. I really felt like I was there. And I really loved all the political intrigue and all of the background, what was happening, all of the machinations that Nicola didn't really understand, but was trying so hard to figure out so she could help Mary. And I loved this. It was well done. And I liked that she tried to kind of not make everyone out to be a villain or a hero. There's a lot of very gray areas. Well, everything's gray, really. There is no real solid black and white in history, but I really like that she portrayed everything as very gray. So there's no, like, David Riccio was not a villain, and Knox, yeah, and John Knox isn't portrayed as straight-up villain either. And so that's really refreshing, I think, because so often everyone has just so much of their own bias that they want to make sure you know that this guy was bad and this guy was good, and you should know that because I'm going to make them look saintly and evil. So I really appreciate when a historical fiction tries to kind of step back a little bit from their own bias and just show you what was happening and show you, well, this guy did this bad thing, but he also did this good thing. So I appreciate that kind of thing. So I really liked this. I thought it was well written and well done. It wasn't too heavy. It wasn't too light. It was just what I wanted for what I needed it to be. And the last book I want to talk about is Tiger Tiger by Lynn Reed Banks. I bought this with the intention of possibly using it in level 1. I'm not going to do that. It didn't really work for that. I really did enjoy this book though. I thought this was really, really well done historical fiction. It's hard to find books about Rome that aren't incredibly violent, because Rome was really, really violent. I mean, you can't look at Rome and not see all the really violent things that were happening. And so to find a book for younger readers about Rome without violence is darn near impossible. Not unless you want to do like an easy reader type thing, and I don't. I would rather use good, well-written literature to explore that time. So I think we're going to stick with the Thieves of Ostia for level 1, but I really like this book, so let's talk about it. This book is about two tiger cubs that are captured in the jungles to bring back to Rome. One is a little bit bigger than the other, and he gets brought to the arena, or the Colosseum, or they call it the circus in the book because that's what it was referred to as, the circus. His job is going to be to eat people and attack other animals and that sort of thing in the arena for spectator sport, you know? And the other tiger cub, the emperor, decides will be a gift for his daughter. He thinks that she would look majestic if she were to be seen with this giant tiger that she's trained. So he brings this tiger cub to her, and Julius is the man that works in the menagerie that the emperor owns, and he is in charge of helping the princess to kind of manage this tiger that she's now going to have as a pet. And she names him Boots because they decide to keep him from clawing her. She refuses to let them rip out his claws, and they've already defanged him, so she doesn't want them to tear his claws out. So he gets to wear these boots so that he can't hurt her. And so she names him Boots. And the story just sort of explores like the different lives these two tigers lead, and you see the circus, and it's really about the circus and the sport that the Romans loved so much to watch. And it shows you like how violent these people were, even though like some of it is extremely violent. And even then the people are kind of like, oh, that was too much. But they still go back for more because it's sort of like our obsession now with violent TV. If you watch the average TV show, especially the average drama, you're going to see murder, you're going to see like just violence. Like The Walking Dead is a great example of that. That show is based on the idea of violence, and it's a very violent show. And so, I don't know, I feel like it's just, we haven't really changed since Roman days with our need to see violence on TV and our need to watch violence. I think throughout history people have just been violent. Overall, we somehow crave that in our imaginations. It's safe to watch it somehow, even though back in this time, like when we watch it now, it's all fake. But the circus wasn't fake. You were really watching people get disemboweled by a tiger or other violent things like that. So I found it to be a really interesting story. I really liked the very tame romance in the story between the princess and the man who handles the animal, the tiger, Julius. He was a slave, and this story is very brief. It's very short. It's not even quite 200 pages, I don't think. Yeah, it's like 190 pages. So it reads really quickly. It's very well done. I thought it was very good historical fiction. I would give this to anyone ages 10 and up. It was a little too violent for younger children, so I definitely don't want to include it in level 1. But I think this is a really well done historical fiction story, and if you've got an older child, especially if an older child doing level 1 that wants more about Rome, this is fantastic. It's very good historical fiction, and I do highly recommend it, just not for younger kids. And so those are the 3 books that I've recently read about that were historical fiction, and I did want to talk about the books I've been reading, and I thought these kind of all went together. Since they're all historical fiction, I thought I should review these 3 together. I might do another one sometime soon about some other books that I've been reading. Have you read any good historical fiction lately? I'd love to hear about it. I am a big fan of historical fiction. Let me know down below in the comments of any of your favorite historical fiction books or anything you've read recently. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye!